Once we've onboarded new employees and they're settled into the rhythm of daily activities, what's our next step? How do we continue to grow and develop ourselves and our teams for both current and future opportunities? In our second Fireside chat of the day, Professional Development for Engineering Teams, Jennifer Carlston, Technology Architect at Pluralsight, and Hywel Carver, CEO at Skillerwell, will present their learnings in facing down challenges, seeking opportunities, training, and mentoring.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Joel. Firstly, welcome everyone to this Fireside chat with Jennifer Carlston, where we're going to be talking about professional development. Please note that this session is going to be recorded, and so you can access it later on. Feel free to add any questions that you have at any time in the chat section on your right, because there is time for Q&A at the end, and it would be wonderful if we had some questions from the audience for that. Jennifer, I think we should dive straight in and talk about structuring professional development in engineering teams, and where I thought would be best to start, because I know you've spoken about domain-driven design and the need for autonomy to enable that. I wondered about your thoughts about developer autonomy and professional development, whether one encourages the other and how you see them interacting.
Okay, so thank you, by the way. This is fun. When we're talking about autonomy and when we're talking about professional development, I want to make sure that we're like defining what we're talking about and what autonomy really means, what professional development really means, because I think that becomes important when we're thinking about systems. I try to think about things from a big picture view. So developer autonomy is the degree to which developers can make decisions and change the course of their work and the systems that they're working within. So that autonomy, you can quantify it by the amount of change and how much, like, the degree of change that they can make within your company or within the actual applications that they're developing. And we can see how that relates to professional development, where that is professional development is the skills that meet the goals of the system that they're developing. So your professional development can be through continuing education, research, study, collaboration, mentoring. All of those things improve your overall professional development within the systems. And hopefully you see the system both as, like your own body, as well as the company that you're working for, as well as your team, all of those things tie into professional development. They're not easy to measure, but when you are thinking about it from the goals that you have and you have clear goals, it becomes a lot easier to do that. So developer autonomy, as you're developing your professional skills, those being able to make changes ties directly to it. It's like the flip side, a flip side of the coin. And I hope that is yeah.
Yeah, oh, go on, you go. Yeah, I think that's really true, that you need to have both in order for your teams to be able to achieve what you need them to. And I think there's another really critical point there, because you mentioned about what's needed from the teams, and actually that leads to a question of how you find the right balance between a team that's delivering valuable products and also spending its time on developing team members, because both of those things do take time and resources, and so getting that balance right, to me, seems crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to balance the authority to make the change, as well as your abilities. And you have to, as a manager, you are trying to help people improve, and increase their authority so that you don't have to manage them as much. I mean, for me as a manager, I would say my job is to make myself not have a job. And that's as a developer as well, I want to automate myself out of a job and find more fun things to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And although professional development, I think often is very very fun in itself. And then, as in that managerial role, how are you finding the balance between those things? Like, how do you determine, 75% of the time this week is going to be on delivering value directly and 25% on developing people? How do you approach that decision?
I I see it holistically. I don't divide it up into a percentage. Um, what I'm trying to do is solve problems, and I look for what's stopping someone from doing something. So we try to focus on single piece flow and limiting our WIP. And we
Mm.
say, okay, this is what we're working on right now. Let's get this done. What's stopping us from getting this done? Is this a problem of I need more skills, or is this a problem of I need to go in and just sit and write code with someone? It That just depends on the situation, and it's having a single-minded focus that will give you the best balance. As long as you have that customer understanding and you're grounded in reality, like you've done your research, there's zero distance between you and the customer.
Mm. Yeah, I really like that, actually, that you're very focused on the goals, and the professional development is what's needed in order to achieve those goals. And for
Yeah.
anyone, some people might not know the term WIP. Do you want to quickly explain that, Jennifer?
Yeah, so WIP is work in progress. It's a term from lean thinking. I highly recommend the book This is Lean if you haven't
Mm.
read it. And focusing on single piece flow is like one of the biggest benefits of, I don't know, it works, it just works better. Like in manufacturing, for people, for everything, when you have a single-minded focus, you're going to get more done than if your focus is constantly shifting.
Mm. And actually, that ties nicely into what you were saying before, that if you've got that focus on what the customer needs, and then your focus moves back to what can we do to get there, and then your focus moves back again. If we don't have the skills, then that's when we start working on professional development to get the skills that we need to deliver the value
Yeah.
to get to the goals.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
So
uh,
go ahead.
no, please, if you wanted to say more, that's right. Otherwise, I have another question that I'd love to ask you.
Go ahead.
Excellent. I'm really interested in this issue of autonomy, or sorry, topic of autonomy. It doesn't have to be an issue, but one issue with it can be about people making mistakes. One of the downsides of autonomy is sometimes people might use their autonomy in a way that you disagree with, or causes problems down the line that someone else might have foreseen. So, how do you balance letting people make mistakes and learn from those mistakes with keeping standards high?
Um, so mistakes happen. They're almost, when you have like when you're viewing something and framing something as a mistake, it means you're probably limiting your view set to a certain extent. So it means that there was an incomplete understanding of what needed to be done, most likely. That's generally when I've seen the largest mistakes. Oh, we're not measuring the things that mattered here. So when you come across mistakes, you want to be embracing them and be curious about them, not see them as, a situation where blame is necessary. A lot of people tend to fall into that, or even more so, people tend to fall into feeling blamed. And that actually slows down the improvement process. That slows down um, your ability to actually change the system and your ability to learn as a developer as well as a manager, whether you're feeling pressure from the top because something broke or there's been a security breach or something along those lines. It's information that, oh, you missed something along the way. Go out and find out what you missed, but you have to have an open and curious mindset in order to find the problem as it's been framed.
Mm.
So you have to give your flaws and your failings attention and love and accept them. And when you blame and when you feel shame, it hides pain. It slows your learning and it slows change. So uh, it's important
And
as a manager, especially because there's that power differential, to um, help people not feel attacked so that they can go out and attack the problem at hand.
mm, and actually, I think
Um,
that ties in really nicely to what you were saying about lean thinking and thinking about the time to recovery and the ability to recover,
mhm.
rather than this, trying to suppress errors. It's embracing the fact that errors will happen, and working out where in
Yeah.
that chain you were describing, the
Mhm.
miscommunication happened, and fixing that.
Yeah, exactly. I know probably a lot of people have read the Accelerate book with the four metrics that are about company success, and part of that being your mean time to error, mean time to recover, and
Mm,
your just continuously deploying and continuously trying to improve over time. And when you find something that you need to improve, you just go in and improve it rather than focusing on who did this, what's going, point fingers.
definitely.
And then,
We've
yeah, it
actually,
does it.
sorry, we actually had our first audience question come in, and I wanted to ask you that because I think it's a really interesting one. So, how much freedom do you typically give your team to direct their own professional development? Is it always related to the immediate problems you have in the company?
um Internally, like our company, because we're a professional development company, it's kind of on the employees to improve their skills over time, and it's encouraged. It's We do give our employees that freedom, and we do give a certain amount of um, like we encourage people to go to conferences, speak at conferences, and uh, read books. We have book clubs all the time,
Mm,
and have found that to pay off overall. We have guilds where we're talking about learning and development. Um, the we definitely try to create a culture of trust and understand that our employees are trying to do their job, and that there's a reason they're there. They're not, you know, we there's a trust but verify, making sure that they have goals set. So those goals are what drives their ability to both have time for professional development and uh, the autonomy to figure out when they need to do that. There's some teams in our company might take one day every week and say, I'm going to go out and focus on something I'd like to learn. Other teams might say, might approach it completely differently. We give them the freedom to decide what works best for them. So
mm,
it is pretty much as possible, because the more we can encourage that freedom, the more passion they're going to have for what they're doing.
mm.
And that
One
that
question.
passion seems to pay off.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like enthusiasm for getting people sort of fired up for their
Mhm.
work. I'm interested again in the comparison between that kind of flow of value you were talking about, from the kind of the customer right down to the work of the engineer, and sort of solving that.
Mhm.
I know there are tools available for visualizing and mapping that flow of value. Do you have any tools you can recommend for people to visualize and map the professional development of their teams?
Well, we definitely have tools inside of Pluralsight that we use, and the products that we sell are uh, built around both developing your skills and then being able to measure how well you've implemented those skills, how much they're showing up in the code. So you can show off as a developer, hey, look, I learned this thing on Pluralsight, and now I'm able to edit the code at a faster rate, or edit code using this new language, or use this new technology. And you can see that in the reports that we're providing through our skills and our flow product. So there's definitely that. We use other we are always building dashboards and reports and trying to measure things for, based off of the goals that we've set for whatever systems we're building. And our own products help us do that, as well as reports from Grafana that we build, reports from a number of different products that help us visualize what's going on. And then there are other techniques that we use as well. I can dive into that if you'd like.
Well, we've actually got another audience question that I think is related, because you were talking about the measuring of skills after training. I'm interested if there are specific techniques or mechanisms that will help uncover people's skill gaps to show where the need for professional development is.
That definitely is part of the Flow product. Like, you can see what people are doing, how often they're doing something, and what they're using to do it using Flow, because we're analyzing their code repositories and their commit and Git changes and history, and looking at it and saying, okay, where are things that could be improved here? Oh, are these people doing more management type work? Are these people doing more, IC type work? And you can see that coming through in the way the commits, the way the pull requests and everything else work. So hopefully that answers your question. Is that what you're looking at?
That was an audience question, but it certainly answered the question as far as I'm concerned. There's another question I'd like to ask you about the time of professional development and what it takes away from the team, because I think it's possible that people can feel like their priority should be just churning out lines of code and not developing themselves. So how do you make sure the team has time and feels comfort and safety during professional development? Does the team ever feel guilty about it if there are other priorities, as there inevitably are?
At our company, most of our teams try to mob or pair. And so a lot of the work that they're doing is learning together and figuring out this is the next thing we need to learn, or they will split off and say, okay, well, you need to go and understand this system better, or we need to go and understand how to write the code in this way, or use, Kubernetes or GitLab or something. It just depends, whatever tools or whatever skills. Everybody's coming to these decisions as a team, agreeing on how, the best path forward, and then moving toward that. And so it's when you have single piece flow that becomes more possible, and you can kind of spread out, have a divergence of thought type exercise, and then come back together and share what you've learned.
And maybe this is related, actually. There's another question here that might tie into what you're saying about single piece flow. How do employees allocate their work time for professional development? Are there strategies that you can share that other people could learn from?
As far as strategies for work time, personally, I would say that the biggest thing is to hire learners, people who want to learn, and they will manage their workflow in an efficient way because they're wanting to learn about whatever it is they're doing, and they feel the passion of trying to figure out this problem. So they will make time for it regardless. As far as allocating work time, I think it's important to have a focus as an organization on learning, to be a learning organization, and to make that part of your organizational identity. And then the balance will be around, like, how can we learn better from our customers, and that will trickle down. How can we learn better as people? That it all feeds into this mindset of openness, curiosity, and how can we make a better product for all of us, and how can we live a better life? That's my experience.
I think that's an absolutely fantastic point to end on, actually. That about making the better product, becoming a learning organization. And I think there are some really big takeaways that you touched on earlier as well, about the need for autonomy and how that enables people to to develop themselves. And I also really liked what you said about mapping the flow of value, and professional development really tying into what's required there. Jennifer, thank you so much for talking with us today and sharing everything. Everyone who's watching can connect with Jennifer and me after the session on social media. In the meantime, thank you all for joining.